Hello! Welcome to my first screencast for my class at the Iron Yard. These are for my students to go over some of the assignments to help them review, to help them think through some things. If you happen to come from some other source outside of my class, welcome. This may not always make a lot of sense because sometimes it is related to class material, but still I hope you get something out of it. These videos are rather informal. These are done at my house. You might hear my children screaming in the background. I'm not going to be doing lots of editing. If you do hear screaming, it's probably okay. This first video is a basic video about how a web page and JavaScript interacts and how you can change the HTML page with JavaScript. I want to start with introducing our tools for today. There's two. One is the Atom editor. Here on the screen we have Atom, my text editor. I have two pages. I have an HTML page and I have a script file. The script file is empty. We'll be adding things to that in a bit. The other tool is the web browser, and I'll be using Chrome mostly because I really like the developer tools in Chrome. We have a before view of the web page and an after view of the web page. Right now they look the same. Well, we'll fix that as we go along. Here at the bottom I have the Chrome developer tools opened up. They will be very useful for us. You could open that up by hitting Command Option I in Chrome if you're a Mac user. And that's our tools. So let's get started. So HTML plus JavaScript. When you have an HTML page that references a JavaScript page, that JavaScript page is hooked up to it in some ways. They're combined. The HTML page is actually turned into something that isn't HTML. The HTML page is turned into something called the Document Object Model, or DOM for short. You interact with the HTML, you interact with the web page through the DOM in JavaScript. If you want to interact with the web page with JavaScript, what you have to do is you have to, from JavaScript, grab a piece of the web page. It could be a very large piece or just a very small HTML element on the page. You have to go grab it, and then you can change things on it. And by changing things on it, you change the page. My favorite metaphor for this is the idea of, or the analogy of, a TV and a remote control. The TV is the TV, the remote control is not the TV, but you need the remote control sometimes so you can change the TV because you don't want to get up and push a button. HTML and JavaScript act in similar ways. If you want to change something on a page, whether it's a big something or a single element on the page, you need to get your remote control. You need to go grab the thing on the page, and then you can manipulate it. Just like if you're sitting on your couch and you need to control the TV, first you have to grab the remote control. Then you can change the volume or change the channel or so on. Same way with JavaScript. So in this particular case, what we want to do is we have an HTML paragraph here. It has a class called ChangeMe and some text in it that says ChangeMe. We see that here on the page. Here's the ChangeMe text. I want to change that text. Now, if I want to change that text, that means, going back to our metaphor, that first we have to grab the paragraph. Then we can change the text. So let's go to our JavaScript. So we have two steps to solve this problem. We want to change the text on the page. That means we have to grab the paragraph and then we're going to change it. So I'm going to do that. First, I'm going to grab the paragraph. I'm going to use something called Document Query Selector. Document in this case is a reference to the DOM. It is a reference to the HTML that has been turned into the visual page that you're seeing whenever you see something in a browser. Document represents that DOM. Query Selector is a function on the DOM allowing you to write a query to select something from the DOM. And you pass in a string into Query Selector, and this string is any CSS selector, and Query Selector will find the first thing in the page it can find that matches the query. And so in our case, we have a paragraph with a class of ChangeMe, and so we can put in a CSS selector to grab that element by its class name. Note the period at the beginning of ChangeMe. Period says what comes after this is a class. So this will grab the paragraph in the page. So if we select our paragraph but don't do anything with it, it's just going to go away. So we need to put that in something. So let's do that. Let's create a variable called paragraph, and we'll put the selected element in that paragraph. Now, this paragraph variable here, we can think of it as our remote control. We have now grabbed our remote control. So if we change something on the remote control, like for example the text, or call a function on the remote control, it will change something in the page. The property you use to change the text of a page is this: paragraph.textContent. And do watch your spelling. So I am now using my remote control. I'm changing a property on it, and I'm going to set the text content to something like I love steak. This is true. So now what we can do, let's go look at the page and see if this changes anything. Here's the page as it originally was. Let's refresh the page either by hitting the refresh button or Command R. We can see now that the page has changed. Going back to our code, let's explain it once again. JavaScript, this code is going to run from top to bottom, so if we take it from top to bottom, we can understand what's going on. We have line number 1, and when you have an equal sign in a line of JavaScript, it's best to think in terms of what happens on the right and then what happens on the left. So what happens on the right is we go to the document, which is the DOM. This is the page. So we are going to grab the DOM, and we're going to say, okay, DOM, select something from the page with the class ChangeMe. And so that will grab the DOM element, whatever that happens to be. It could be a div or a paragraph or whatever. And it's going to put it in this variable, which we have named a paragraph. That name could be anything. I just chose it because it's a good name for a paragraph. So this variable now holds our DOM element, and we can change it by changing the text content property on the DOM element. And this will change the text on the page. And like so. You might have seen a little flicker there. That's the page loading as it is at first, and then it being changed by JavaScript. Now I'm going to make one more change to this just so we can see a little bit of what's going on. I'm going to write a console log call right here, and I'm going to put the paragraph as a string. This isn't the actual paragraph, this is just some text. And then I'm going to put our variable name right there. And now I'm going to go back and refresh the page. Now that we have our console log, we see what we put in the console log there. We have the paragraph, which is the string I put at the beginning of that. And then we have the variable, or what was in the variable. And we can see that what was in the variable is a paragraph, and it has a class of ChangeMe, and it now has the text anyway of I love steak. If you use a console log, you can sometimes tell yourself about things. You can say, what is in this variable? Or if I call this function, what do I get back from it? Console logging can be very, very useful. This can be especially useful when you've made mistakes. And so our page has a paragraph with a class ChangeMe. This is the class, and that pairs it up with this class attribute here on the page. So I want to make a mistake, and I can show you where console log can be useful. I'm going to go misspell my class name. Because I've misspelled my class name, when line 1 runs, the document will then try to select an element out of the page based on the class name chain me. That doesn't exist. Therefore, it will put something in the variable, and then we can see that based on the console log. So we get an error. That's unfortunate. But the console log will help us with this. If we look at the console log, where before we had the paragraph element, right after that text, the paragraph, now we have a null. So what that means is we tried to get something from the page, but failed. We put in the wrong query, and so therefore the DOM returned us nothing. And that's what null is in this case. Null means I don't have anything for you by that name. And so, because there's nothing in the variable, when we try to use our remote control, when we try to use it, we get an error. Because paragraph, here on line 5, this variable paragraph, the value in it is null. So therefore, we can't set the text content of null because null is not a DOM element. And so JavaScript gives us an error. So we'll fix it. Once again, it's supposed to be change me. I will go back, refresh the page. The page is changed, and our console log says what we would expect and what we would want. So that's our first example. It's fairly simple. We're just grabbing something out of a page and changing the text. The most important thing to remember here is whenever you want to change something on the page or interact with the page from JavaScript, you will almost always have to go out, grab what you want to change, and then change it. It's not a one-step process, it's a two. You want to change a paragraph, you have to grab the paragraph, then you change the paragraph. And we did that by grabbing the paragraph with query selector on document, putting it in a variable. And then we can change the paragraph, changing the text to whatever we want, and that will change the page.